Everyone assumes doctors are rich, but very few people understand the financial reality behind physician life. Keep listening to hear Dr. Naomi Lawrence-Reid and I have an honest conversation about what doctors actually earn, why so many feel financially stressed despite their high incomes, and the money habits that quietly separate wealthy physicians from overwhelmed ones. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded Empty podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Lisha Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Naomi Lawrence-Reid.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time. As physicians, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we secure our income. That means that if we were, for some reason, unable to work due to a car accident, a medical illness, a chronic condition, mental health disorder, that we still have money coming in. Because a lot of our financial plans are contingent on our high doctor income. And so one of the things that you will need to do is make sure that you get long-term disability insurance. And I know, as well as anybody, that getting this is not necessarily fun, and all insurance agents are not created equal. However, Pradeep Otto and his team at PKA Insurance Group are different. They are who you want to contact if you need long-term disability insurance or life insurance. They have a reputation of putting people over profits and always doing what's best. If you're in need of life insurance or disability insurance, be sure to reach out to Pradeep and his team today. They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve. All right, folks, you might have heard a new voice. Well, actually, returning voice, right? A returning voice. Dr. Naomi is here joining us again on the podcast. As you all know, Brittany is off doing one of the million amazing things that she is doing. And so we have another doctor that we know and love and trust who is back here to, I wouldn't say fill in Brittany's shoes, but like step into her own shoes
Right.
and provide us with her knowledge and expertise and insight on the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I could never fill Brittany's shoes, but I am happy to keep them warm while she's away.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Even though you've been on the podcast before, why don't you remind our audience what kind of doctor you are? Where do you live? What kind of work do you do? Enlighten us again.
Happy to. Again, I'm Dr. Naomi Lawrence-Reid. I am a pediatrician based in San Diego, and I am also founder of Doctoring Differently. For the past 8 years, I have been working in new and different ways as a pediatrician. I started off in a full-time clinical setting in a PZR. I was incredibly unhappy, but figured out, listen, there are other ways doctors can work as physicians that were not taught in training. So right now, I balance my time between locums and non-clinical work, some expert witness work, medical writing, aesthetics, even veteran disability, and I teach physicians how to do the same.
Wow. Okay. That was a mouthful. Okay. Because I heard all that and I'm tired. During one of these episodes, because you'll be joining us for several episodes, which we're
Yes.
excited about. But on one of these episodes, we're going to have to get your expertise on the side gigs because I heard some lucrative side gigs in there, which I'm sure our audience is going to want to get the skinny on. But for
Yes.
today, I kind of wanted to talk about the truth behind some of the doctor myths out there and kind of spill the tea and have a discussion about doctor income, debt, lifestyle inflation, those sorts of things. I know a lot of people in our audience are physicians. They might be interested in this topic, and other people may not be physicians, but maybe they're high income earners and just like kind of want to get a little peek behind the hood of what kind of goes on in our world. And so I figured that would be a good place for us to start today. And of course, I'm excited to have you enlighten us along the way.
Sure. Happy to do it. And to kick some of these good questions and thoughts back to you. I think you have a lot to say.
We'll see. We'll see. Okay, so the first thing is the doctor money illusion. And I don't know if you are familiar with this. I'm sure you are, though, is that a lot of people assume that doctors are automatically wealthy. That is not necessarily true. I have a story. So actually, I don't know if you know this, but I used to work in finance before I went to medical school. One of the places that I worked was this private equity firm. Most of the firm managed pension fund money from like firefighters, teachers, that sort of thing on the public side. And so that was money that they invested very safely and things like ETFs and index funds and high yield savings accounts and things like that. But I worked on the private side and we got about 10% of the money that we could invest in risky investments, if you will. And so it was me and the partners, and it was like this fun sort of thing. And I remember being in meetings and startup companies pitching us and me being in there asking them questions. It's a very exciting time. I really liked that job because I got paid pretty well.
Yeah, I guess
But
so.
I had this inkling that I wanted to go to medical school. I'd always wanted to do sports medicine.
Mhm.
And At the time, I was living in DC and I was working in private equity and I was actually in grad school at the time as well. And I was like, man, I just couldn't scratch that itch. You have this feeling that you're like meant to do something.
Yeah.
And I just was like, man, I just feel like I really want to be a doctor. I really want to do sports medicine. And so I decided that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the MCAT. I'm going to apply to medical school and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And my colleagues thought I was insane because people in the finance world did
Mhm.
not believe this myth that doctors were rich and wealthy. What they saw and what they told me was, Leisha, you're crazy. Those
Yeah.
doctors I know work way too much.
Right.
They are in school for in a million years. They take out tons of debt and they really don't seem that happy. Honestly, Leisha, you work your way up here, you'll make just as much, probably more.
That's right.
And so I kind of went into medicine not with the whole illusion that doctors make a lot of money. I went in thinking, oh my gosh, I'm giving up this job in finance to
Yeah.
go do more school and like
Mhm.
take out more debt. And so I'm saying this to say that the whole time I was in medical school, and even throughout my training and residency and in fellowship, I was thinking they were right.
Yeah,
I don't know.
they were.
Like it is a lot of school and it is a lot of training, and you don't make a lot of money for a very long time. And then when you start making money, there's all of these things that sort of take away your money. So that's kind of my personal story, but I am very curious about you. Like when you were going into medical school, were you
Sure.
like, oh my God, I'm gonna be this rich doctor? Like, what was kind of your thought?
Well, I'll say that I did not have your experience before medical school, which is so invaluable. I did not have that perspective at all. I was, in my imagination, like I think most of us, I was a dutiful pre med student. I took 2 years off between undergrad and medical school. Medical school was always the goal, and I didn't deviate from that. I didn't have another career or any other perspective going into it. Like many of us, my assumption was, you know what? It's sacrifice. It'll be hard. It'll be a grind. I'll take out loans. But on the other side, in the end, I will be paid well. I will be paid fairly, equitably. I will be able to pay back loans, but also have the lifestyle that I aspire to have. So there were a lot of assumptions that I think I would argue 95% of physicians going into medicine assume, right? We are all very mission driven. I think many of us do go into medicine for quote unquote the right reasons, but we assume that our sacrifice, our time invested, the importance of the very critical work that we do will be rewarded, will be compensated on the other side of it. That's just the assumption because how could it not be? And we assume someone, somebody, some entity is on the other end ensuring that we will be taken care of. And unfortunately, I think so many of us we go through our whole training process without a peep of financial education. And then we get to the other side and we say, okay, is someone going to teach me how to negotiate? Or at least if they didn't teach me how to negotiate, this must be the maximum I can make here. And then we settle into jobs and over time, and I know we'll get into this, I think the illusion fades away, the fantasy fades away, reality sets in. Oh, I've got debt, I've got loans, I maybe am in a lower paying specialty, I have very little financial education, and no one is coming to save me. And I would say that was how my financial journey and financial education as a physician began. Full transparency.
No, I appreciate it. I am curious and I'm a little
Yes.
bit nosy. So if I'm asking
Please
too
tell
nosy
me.
of questions, we can just edit it out. But I am curious, did you take out loans for medical school?
I most certainly did take out loans for
Oh, you're
medical
like, yeah,
school.
girl.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of
Uh-huh.
them.
I went to the university. I'll say this. I took out loans. I went to a state medical school. I'm from Massachusetts. I went to the University of Massachusetts Medical School, which in comparison is a very affordable medical school with great quality, I believe. And I started medical school in 2007. So I bought a Corolla to start medical school.
I had a Corolla too.
Yes, big ups Corollas. But yes, I took out loans. I did not have any assistance or any real financial aid. And I graduated with around $175,000 of educational debt when I finished.
Wow. Okay.
What about you? Did you have to take out any loans?
Yes, I did. And actually, I took out loans for medical school. So that answer is yes. But I also went to grad school. And
Mm.
so that
Mhm.
was for me, I don't want to say I regret going to grad school. I think that everything for a reason, it definitely gave me like a different perspective. I got a master's in public health for full transparency, but I went to Duke for undergrad and Duke actually had a really strong financial aid program. So I didn't actually graduate Duke with lots of loans. I think I graduated Duke with $5,000 in student loans, to be honest with
Great.
you. So I didn't have a huge student loan burden, even though I went to a quote unquote elite school or very expensive school, if you will.
Mhm.
Grad school, I took out a lot of loans to get my master's in public health, maybe 60, 70,000, which I guess a lot is relative, but I'm just giving you this perspective. And then I went to medical school I'm from the state of Florida, so I went to the University of Florida for medical school, which, similar to you, by all intents and purposes, is not a super expensive medical school, or at least it wasn't when I was there. And I actually got a partial scholarship. But that being said, even with all of that all together, like all educational debt, by the time I finished medical school, I think I maybe had like 270,000. For a lot of people who have experienced this, the schools get more expensive over time. And each
They
year
sure do.
they tend to approve these tuition increases. And so the
Mhm.
price in 2007 was a lot different than the price in 2012 or the price in 2015 or even now the price in 2026,
Very
right?
much.
And so I had a lot of student loan debt, as did you, right? And so one
Mhm.
of the things that is really interesting that doctors know, but non-doctors may not be aware of is not only are you taking out student loans, you're taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans, which when you incorporate the interest and the compounding on all of that quickly grows. So I am curious about this. I know you're a pediatrician, and so you did 3 years of residency. I did family medicine, 3 years of residency. I also did a fellowship. I'm not sure if you
Mhm.
did a fellowship.
I did not.
Not. Okay. By the time you finish training, do you mind giving our audience a peek under the hood of like,
Sure.
if you remember, what was your average salary while you were in residency? Once you finish medical school, right? You are an MD or a DO, like you're a doctor, you finish medical school,
Yes.
then you go through 3 years of training. Do you mind giving us a glimpse into what your salary was when you were in training and what your student loans were once you finished training?
I believe my salary as a resident now, I did my residency in New York City. I believe it was on the higher side just because cost of
Cost of
living
living? Mhm.
different than Topeka, Kansas, just a little
Yeah.
different. No shade, I hope some Kansians out there. It's just different rents.
We got it. We got it. We got it. We got it.
And so I believe it was around 50,000 a year starting maybe as an intern, 50, 55. I started my residency in 2011, and then it went up small incrementally, over 3 years from there. Maybe I cleared 60,000 maybe by the end. But I just wanna make a point about kind of going into my first attending job. So this is for the residents listening, even attendings. You may be like me, 2014, we're getting to the end of our training. We're starting to talk about getting a job and where do we look? Not a lot of education around that. And that can be a whole other episode around that. But in retrospect, I started to see how I was hamstrung from the beginning in terms of money. And we were getting these offers and we're getting these contracts, and we ask our residency leadership, hey, can someone explain this to us? You all have spoon fed all of this information about how to be a great doctor, how to be a pediatrician. But now we need some tangible life skills about getting these jobs. Can you bring someone in to talk to us about negotiation? How should we go about this? And the response was, I guess we could maybe find someone's husband who's a lawyer to come talk to us at noon conference. Okay, they ended up bringing in someone's real estate attorney husband. So, first of all, whoa, no, not okay. Not every lawyer does this. Also, doesn't this happen every year? Don't you graduate residents every year? There's nothing set in place to give us any education. But ultimately, when we kind of pushed back, I remember explicitly being told, don't try to negotiate your salary as a physician. It doesn't work for physicians. It certainly doesn't work for pediatricians. Just be grateful that you have a job, put your head down and start working. And that was what we were told, a room full of almost 30, mostly female pediatric residents. So, what a way to kind of immediately shape our minds around money, around the value of our time, our energy, our expertise, our education, and sending us out into the world with that energy and with that attitude. So, my starting salary, to answer your question, my starting offer, I moved to the West Coast and I moved to Southern California. I worked as a generalist in a pediatric ER, and my starting salary was $125,000 a year. And I was just told, I had that voice in my head, can't negotiate, non negotiable, be grateful. You're here. It's your first job. This is a six-figure salary. It is more than you made as a resident. I took that contract, flipped to the end, signed on the dotted line, didn't even attempt, didn't question, didn't ask. That was my starting salary. And I quickly learned that this was not tenable for my lifetime. Over time, I became very adamant about not working until I was paid what I was worth.
Yeah, I think that story kind of highlights a lot of concerns and issues. But one of the things that I wanted people who are not physicians to know is like, even once you graduate medical school and you're a doctor, you're still not paid very much. You were paid $50,000. And even before you said 50,000, you were like, hey, this is on the higher side. Excuse me, what in New York
Yeah.
City? Are you kidding? I did residency a little after you, and I did it at Emory in Atlanta. And I think my starting salary was $60,000 or so. And similar to yours, the salary when you're a resident tends to increase with inflation. So you get a 2 to 3% increase, something along those lines each year. Now, I did fellowship in California and the salary was much higher. I think I was making close to $90,000 actually when I was in fellowship in California. But my point still remains is like, you had over 170 something thousand dollars in student loans,
Mhm.
and your starting salary as a physician was
Yes,
$50,000 in New York City. Like, how in the world are you ever supposed to pay back your loans? Right.
that's right.
And then once you become an attending, right, once you finish your training, you can practice on your own. You're supposed to be making the big bucks, quote unquote. That for you was 150,000 and your debt was almost 200.
125,
One
125.
t that's in I'm sorry, that's insane,
I know.
especially in
That's
California
right.
with the
That's right.
taxes. So, one of those things, I guess our first myth was like, "Oh, all doctors are rich." I think you just busted that bubble, and a lot of doctors are, like, nodding their head like, "Yeah, not true." I mean, okay, granted, if you're some hotshot plastic surgeon, radiologist, dermatologist in 2026 who's a private practice partner, whatever, maybe you're clearing way more than that. But that is not the case for a lot of physicians, especially those who work in primary care specialties. And it brings me to my next point
Mhm.
is along this lines of like why a lot of quote unquote high income professionals and physicians still feel broke. To me, a lot of the answer is like your quote unquote large paycheck
Mhm.
disappears very quickly. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't tend to go as far as you may think. And
Yeah.
I think you highlighted why. You're living in California,
That's
you're
right.
paying an obscene amount in taxes, you're making not as high of a salary considering all of the debt and your own living expenses. Like
That's right.
sometimes we do ourselves a disservice and we have lifestyle creep and inflation and we feel
Mhm.
like we deserve these things. And so we
Mhm.
end up spending more than maybe we should. So some of that is on us. But I think this whole point of like why high income professionals still feel broke still stands. Like the money to me doesn't go as far as a lot of people assume it should.
Absolutely. And I'll say for me, I am not giving myself all kinds of credit and props, but I certainly did not have the lifestyle creep. It was just me. I had the money that was coming in my paycheck and my bills. That meant I was renting a one-bedroom apartment. I was still driving that med school Corolla. I was living very frugally within the bounds of my paycheck, my debt. And it took roughly 2 years for me to look up and think, is this is my life? If I don't make a change, if I don't, I'll say for me before even preceding the financial education I eventually developed, it was like, no, no, no. I need to make more money. I need simply to make more money. And that for me, like I said, within 2 years was the impetus for changing my life and finding all of these other ways to work as a physician. I think that we want to believe that we were taught all the ways to work or the right ways to work. We trust our education. I'll say it's a little bit of a Stockholm syndrome. We just love and trust in these systems that created us. But at some point, I think many of us arrive at a place of they did not teach us everything. And quite frankly, this system is not set up for my success at all. If anyone has read the Rich Dad Poor Dad series, he goes into, and this he wrote that in the late 90s about how education, American education in general, intentionally does not include financial education for everyone because it wants us to be employers and to kind of be cogs in the wheel machines. And I think as physicians, we have a degree of ego and hubris that we're above that. We shouldn't be that. Yet, many of us do not own our own practices. We work for these large corporations. Ergo, we are employees. So I think that for me, it was truly out of survival. It was, I don't want to live this way. I don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck. I don't like these very small numbers in my bank account after my loan repayment and all my bills have come out. I don't want to be driving my Corolla for the next 10 years. It was all of that. And then it was, I will have to change my life. I cannot wait for someone to give me permission to get a new job or find new ways to work. I can't wait for someone to fall into my lap and give me the financial education I've been looking and waiting for. I have to actually put one foot in front of the other, figure out new ways to work, figure out new ways to bring in income, and educate myself along the way. And no, it's not a one step process, but I can't be ashamed anymore, which we can get into the S word of shame, which I think holds so many physicians back when it comes to talking about money at every stage. And then actually doing something with it, recognizing that uncomfortable feeling that I have. Oh, well, she has a rich husband, or he comes from money and I can never, or they are an ophthalmologist or a plastic surgeon. I had to take responsibility for my choices, my life, the specialty I chose, but then at the same time recognize I can do this. Nobody can do this but me, but I can do this.
Okay, snap, snap. Okay, mic drop. I love that. Like, I think it is so easy to say, the world is against me. I just was dealt a bad hand. And
Right.
like, those things may be true.
Yeah.
And also, you can take charge of your life and you can try to
Please.
make changes in your life
Mhm.
instead of waiting for the inequities to disappear, instead of waiting for somebody to save you, instead of waiting for somebody to recognize your value. So,
That's right. You got to do it.
totally get that. I think one of these other myths or sources of frustration is the physician compensation. And you kind of alluded to this, how a lot of physicians are not taught how to negotiate. And we're kind of taught that, like, you should accept what you get. If you try to negotiate, you're going to fail. It's not going to be successful, that sort of thing. And I find that a lot of physicians just do not truly understand how a doctor income actually works, because
Not at all.
either you were in medical school taking out loans, so you're living off debt, or you're in
Mhm.
training and you're getting paid so little
Mhm.
that you're just in survival mode. So then once you finish training and your salary triples, doubles, quadruples, or whatever,
Mhm. Mhm.
now you're thinking that you're going to be able to live this lifestyle. I don't know about you, but you're thinking that you're going to be able to do all of these things with your
Yeah.
money. Then you have all of these things, right? That you're kind of
Mhm.
taking your money away, so to speak, right? High
Mhm.
taxes and all of these benefits that you have to pay for. At least for me, like, the perception of what I could do with a certain amount of money was very different from my reality. I remember being a resident in residency, looking at my attending physicians, and I didn't know exactly how much they made per year, but I had a ballpark that the majority of them made well over 200K a year. Let's just say that. I knew that going in. So I was like, huh, I'm struggling right now on my like 60K per year salary.
Mhm.
If I had 200K, I would not complain. If I had 200K, I could deal with these patients that are overwhelming my schedule right now. If I had 200K, oh my gosh, I could like pay my bills. I would pay down my debt. I'll be living large, blah, blah, blah. And I think for
Mhm.
a lot of Americans who do not make physician salaries, like, let's just say people who don't make six figures, I think that's their perception as well. I think the studies show that when you poll people and you ask them, how much money do you want to make a year? Most people say about 20% more than they currently have. Like, they don't say 20%, but the number that they give is usually
Yeah.
around 20% more than they have, right? If they make 80K, they're like, ooh, 100K,
Yeah.
I'm good. They make 100, they're like, "You know what? 125, just like a little bit." They're in 250, they're like, "275, I'm not gonna be greedy?" And so it's usually a little bit more, but it's our perception
Mhm.
of like, if I just had a little bit more, my problems would be solved. And I think one of the sort of, I can't think of the right word, but the word shock is coming to my mind of how little I had. I guess it was just the reality that I couldn't do as much as I thought I could do.
So once you finish residency, you're saying you got to that place, you got that 200 something around,
Yes.
and then you were like, in your mind, you thought, okay, wait, my problems were supposed to disappear because I know what it's like to try to live off 60,
Yes.
but now I have 200 and it's almost like more money, more problems.
Yeah, well, I actually piecemealed it because when I was like in residency, your salary increases each year, but I was also making money on the side at that time because I was very like, I need to get paid for my time. And
Yeah.
other residents were moonlighting, and I was like, I don't want to work more shifts. I want to
Yeah.
make money without working more. So I'm pretty savvy in that way, and I was making money in other sources. And so when I was a fellow in California, my salary already was near 90, and I think I was making another 50 or 60 or maybe 70K in passive income. So my point was that, like, I went from making 60 to probably 70 to probably 80, 90 to probably 150. I didn't even have this huge jump. I was kind of making more money each year. And it was crazy because I'm going to say this just as blanketed as it's coming, but I didn't feel rich. And I thought my perception was that, how could a person with no kids, no
Yeah.
spouse, and living on her own,
I
in a
hear you.
frugal-ish person, I didn't spend a ton of money. I drove, the Corolla that we were talking about, and
Corolla gang.
upgraded, if you will,
Yeah.
to a Kia Forte. Like, how could that not be enough? And I think it was
Right.
baffling. And I think that when you make 50, 60K and you don't feel like you have enough, you get at least some sympathy from people. But when you're making 300K, like, people lose their sympathy for you real quick.
Absolutely. And that's why it's difficult. I'm someone who I have, through doctoring differently, been on Twitter, I have great discussions, but you're talking to the masses. And so when I start talking to physicians, to my most largely physician audience, the rest of the world is seeing it too. And when I start talking about physician disparities, physician salaries, I mean, it's a lot of anger. I'll tell you that right now. I tweeted a few months ago about a large hospital system here in California paying cardiologists $200 an hour. And by the way, a non-boarded cardiologist was making like $5 an hour less than a boarded cardiologist. It was discussion. I mean, the physicians were into it, but you're talking to the masses about 200 an hour when minimum wage is 15, 16 in California. But at the same time, risk, the malpractice, the debt, the length of service, the importance of what we do, it's the whole other ballgame. So yes, these are important conversations to have among physicians, but you try to have them with the rest of the world. And you're right. There's never going to be sympathy for us for what we do in that way. But don't worry, when they need a cardiologist, I told them, plenty of the people who are mad, I was like, you don't want the cheap cardiologist. You don't want a cardiologist who's going to work for $50 an hour. I don't know that that's someone you want to see. But there is, as you said, so much to this, but important conversations to have. And I suspect you said an important point a few minutes ago. You had an assumption about what your attendings made, but I suspect they didn't tell you. There's not a whole lot of discussion, and we can talk about salary transparency, which is another part of the culture here that I think is a large impediment to physician financial freedom, education. From the very beginning, we don't know who is making what around us past training. In training, we're all making the same, right? Even across specialty in a hospital, all PGY1s making the same, all PGY2s, 3s. But you're attending. Something tells me if I want my attending's job here, I should probably know what they made or at least what they started. But I would never ask. Oh my gosh, how rude. Most times you can look it up. How often do we do that? I don't remember doing that as a resident either. But that attitude of don't think about money, don't talk about money starts then in that they could very easily share their salary, but something tells me they're feeling these feelings we're now feeling, they felt, and their shame. There's, I should feel more, I should feel wealthier, I should be making more. But the salary transparency, I think, is a huge part that it takes each of us to try to overcome as well. I share my salary. I'm very loud about what my starting salary as an attending was and what I make doing all of the gigs that I do, because I want doctors to know it starts with each of us. The system's not going to do it. We have to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Another big point is that one of the things that oftentimes can hold us back is not having the salary transparency and this whole opinion around medicine that doctors shouldn't talk about money, right? You shouldn't be in it for the money. It's rude to talk about money. Us avoiding some of those conversations could be holding us back. And some people avoid those conversations, as you mentioned, for various reasons. Maybe they feel shame about what they are currently making themselves.
Mhm.
Maybe they are jealous of what kind of offers you are getting. Sometimes there's a whole host of things, but I think that our reluctance to talk about money prevents us from maybe getting what we deserve. And
Every
so
time.
I think for a lot of people, it means you got to get better at negotiating, muster the courage to be able to ask for more, ask for different, right? And ensure that your compensation matches the value that you bring. And also keeping in mind some of these biases that may hold you back, like your inability or reluctance to negotiate may be the reason why your colleague is making more than you. Being that kind of person that has these meetings with your employer or having the meetings with the person who has the ability to increase, whether it's your base salary, your productivity bonus, all of those things.
That's right.
And I am curious for you because I know that you do locums.
Mhm.
What was your experience trying to negotiate a locums contract? Was
Mhm.
it difficult for you? Was it easy for you? Were you able to talk to multiple different companies and get various offers? I mean, I know how it works for a lot of people who take traditional jobs and are employees,
Mhm.
but as a locum doc, you're the employee and the employer essentially. You got a little bit more control. So I was just curious about how that has worked for you.
Let me say, I started locums out of survival. You're now talking to me 8 years after doing this and being in this world. So I have so much more knowledge and education about moving in this way. But I'm gonna go back to the woman who was making 125, 200 in debt, driving the Corolla.
Mhm.
And we could talk about my final straw moment, how I ended up leaving that academic job. I went per diem first, which I was just offered hourly rate, took it. But after a few months, I thought, you know what? They said, don't even pick up my, and by they, my residency leadership, don't even pick up the phone when a locums recruiter calls. It's not viable. It's not legitimate work. Only bad doctors do locums. You know, it's not consistent. And all of these biases just get built into us because we're like, oh, okay, I won't even ever consider locums. Never forget that those people, and I want to believe our academic mentors really do have our best interests in mind, but so much of their advice is rooted in their own biases and fears. And likely they've never left academics, yet they're telling us what's beyond. And it's a lot of hearsay on their part as well. So I finally said, you know what? I did everything I was supposed to do. Took all the boards, took all the tests, took the job I was supposed to do, didn't negotiate like they told me not to do. And I'm so unhappy. I'm now going to do the opposite. Picked up the phone. I'll say, so to answer your question, I just wanted to give that context about I was not coming in with education. How do I
Mhm.
talk to locums? How do I negotiate? I know what I'm doing. I just did it. Okay. I answered the phone when a locums recruiter called. How many times do we just decline? No, they're emailing, they're calling, they're texting, leave me alone. But if you want a job, if you are curious about what's out there, they have jobs. Okay. And they have high paying jobs. Every other industry uses headhunters and recruiters, yet we feel like that cheapens a job on our behalf. I picked up the phone when a recruiter called. First of all, they don't necessarily know who I am or what I want. So I told her I'm in California. I'm a pediatrician. I generally want a pediatric hospitalist job, and I kind of want to stay closer to Southern California. Couple of conversations. So it wasn't just one conversation. Okay. We had a series of conversations, and she presented this offer to me. And I'll tell you very clearly when I learned that prices were not fixed. I think the initial number she quoted me was something like maybe it was $1,000 for a 24-hour call plus like an hourly rate on top of that. And in her mind, she's reading the salary description. And I hear in her voice, she reads out 1,000. She's like, it's 1,000 a day for a 24-hour call, but then this hourly rate. But then she's like, we can do better than that. $1,200 a day. And I remember very clearly just the way that she was just like, boop, boop, just $200 more, like it was nothing. And I was like, "Oh my goodness. Oh." She just decided it now this woman was the owner of this small locums company. So she did have the power to do that. Not all recruiters or people calling us can do that. But I just heard in her voice, I didn't know anything. I had just been accepting offers that had been given to me. I'd never negotiated before, but in her voice, I heard her just say, "Not that, that." And that's when I knew. That was such I can remember where I was sitting in my little condo, the light bulb went on over my head like, "Wow." So, that was the beginning. I then went on to do locums at this one facility for almost 5 years. It was so, so great, and again, I can get deep into my locums experience later. And over time, I negotiated on that 24-hour rate. So, by the end, I was getting $2,000 flat for a 24-hour call plus an hourly callback rate on top of that as a pediatric hospitalist. But it started with that interaction, which I would have never had I not picked up the phone. Things are hard the first time you speak to a recruiter, the first time you ask for more money, or guess what? You may be told no. But I'll tell you, I'll tell you what, I've never gotten a raise I didn't ask for. So please know that. Answer is always no until you ask. So just know the money is not going to necessarily fall out the sky on you. Oh, you've been working hard. You've been staying late. Instead of seeing doing bedtime with your kids, you've been writing notes, or we see you've been working hard. We're going to pay you more. It doesn't work that way. As I said, no one's coming to save you. You have to recognize your own value, take those first steps as maybe uncomfortable as they are, and negotiate your own worth and value. No one else will do it.
I love that. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. And is so funny. As you were telling this story, I was thinking about an experience that I had during one of my first jobs. This is before I was a physician, but I remember during one of my first jobs, I had mustered up the courage to actually like email somebody in charge about
Mhm.
trying to get a job, right? Which is already
Mhm.
takes a little bit of like gravitas to even do. But I was doing that. And he called me in and we were talking. He was like, you know what? I like you. Like, we don't really have a position, but I like you. We could probably make something work. And I remember sitting in his office and him asking me, how much you want to get paid an hour? No one had ever asked me that before.
Right.
And I didn't know what to say. And now I know way more, right? You got to be prepared. You
Mhm.
got to know what the average is. You got to know to ask for more. They'll always
Mhm.
bring you down. Like now I can like coach people
Mhm.
through negotiation. I was like, oh my gosh. I was just hoping he gave me a job. And
Yeah.
now, not only was he seemingly like willing to give me a job, but he was willing to pay me what I thought I was worth. And this
Yeah.
was my chance to advocate for myself. And I froze. I froze. I
Mhm.
didn't know what to say because
Mhm.
at the time I was making so little. I mean, I was so young. I was probably in my early 20s. I was making so little. At this point, I was probably making like 12 bucks an hour, some work study job or something. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to ask for anything that would be too much or,
Mhm.
and so I think I ended up saying 20 bucks an hour, which to me at the time was like, oh,
Mm.
that's like,
I know, big time.
who can live off 20 bucks an hour? So I was like, $20 an hour. And he was like, done. And at that moment, I instantly regretted it because I like,
He answered too fast. He answered back too fast.
he
Yeah,
answered
yeah.
back too fast. He was so excited. He was like, what? I get
Mm.
this like eager
Mhm.
girl who is like willing to
Mhm.
do whatever, like in terms of working really hard.
Yep.
$20 an hour, that is
Yep.
nothing. Like he was just
Nothing.
like, you are hired right now. You want to start today?
Hey.
That was a very painful lesson for me personally of like when you undersell yourself,
Yeah.
no one is
Mhm.
coming to save you. You have to advocate for what you want and you need to go into negotiations prepared. And before you accept an offer, because it's just more than what you've made in the past,
Right.
you need to make sure that compensation that you're going to receive is going to reflect the value you bring. And I think for a lot of physicians, it may not be being happy with $20 an hour, but it may be them being happy with $100 an hour, which, like, in the grand scheme of things, maybe more than they've ever made in their life. It may be more than their parents have made, but you may be able to command more. You may be able to negotiate more. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we just accept the first thing that we're given without at least trying to advocate for more. And so for me, it was like a very interesting life
Yeah.
lesson of,
I hear you. And I'll just say we're probably closing soon, but none of this is our fault. So if you're listening, you're a physician, you're feeling that like, "Ugh, I have never tried to negotiate, think I'm making less than other people in my department. I don't know. Please know this is not your fault. We tend to blame ourselves. This system created us. It groomed us. It told us what you want doesn't exist. You exist for the benefit of this institution, for the benefit of your patients. If you are over here asking for more money, well, that's greedy. And we are often forced back into that lane, our heads forced down away from the money. We are kept very far from those tables that determine our compensation or compensation in medicine in general. So if you're listening and feeling, this conversation is hurting a little bit, I'm feeling a little bit, hopefully from sharing our experiences, you're feeling a little bit better about yourself. But please know this is not your fault. This is literally the point of our medical education to teach us how to be employees, to be excellent physicians, but not be good advocates for ourselves. Until now, you're learning now how to be that advocate for yourself. And I'm so proud of you, Alicia, me, Dr. Brittany, who's not even here, but all of us who have kind of harnessed that energy. Sometimes it really was anger, it was learning, it was a little shame, but we knew that we had to do it anyway. So kudos to all of us.
yeah, we can be good doctors and still care about money.
Please. Good doctors care about money. How
I
about
love it.
that?
I love it.
No, switch that up. You're a good doctor. I mean, you can be a good doctor, but I'm going to say you're a better doctor if you really are caring about your money, caring about yourself, valuing your time, putting boundaries around your education, what you're worth.
Yeah, yeah. I remember me giving talks to residents and saying, I don't know about you, but I work better when I'm paid well.
That
And so,
part. That
and so
part.
and they were like, "Yeah, yeah, you're getting paid well. All of a sudden, you can tell her a little bit more." And so you come to work, you're happier, you're excited. Hey, how y'all doing? And so I love that. So we will table this conversation for today, but hopefully our listeners found this very helpful and inspiring, right? If you are somebody listening, this is the sign that you didn't know you needed. Renegotiate your contract to advocate for yourself, to start caring about your money, right? No one's going to care more about your money than you do. And this is your sign to start caring, to start thinking about what can I do to increase my compensation. All right, now that we kind of beat that with a dead horse, however the saying goes, let's get into some fun money. What is
Okay.
something fun, Naomi, that you are doing with money?
Oh, for me, it's always travel. It's always travel.
Ooh, where are you going?
Well, this summer, I am going to Ibiza, Madrid, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Botswana.
Oh my gosh, you just kept
I
naming
know.
countries. Like I thought we were gonna stop at one. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're gonna have to do some sort of travel episode
Yes,
where
please.
you enlighten us on like how you planned these things
Sure.
and if you are willing to get transparent about how much you're spending on these things so we can have a
Yeah,
glimpse. Cause I think I heard Ibiza in there. Oh my gosh. Did I hear South Africa or one
you
of the African?
did. South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana.
Have you been to South Africa, Zimbabwe?
I have not. I've
Oh
not
my
been. For
gosh.
me, I just love going places I've never been. So all of those places, I've been to Spain, never Ibiza or Madrid. And yes, I'm doing a National Geographic tour that starts in Cape Town, goes to Johannesburg, does Kruger National Park. Then we're going into Zimbabwe, seeing Victoria Falls, then doing another day trip into Botswana. And yes, it's a group trip, it's a tour. Planning like minutia of travel is not something I enjoy doing. Some people do. Great for you. So I am incredibly excited and know these are all new places for me. What about you? What are you spending on?
Well, first, I've been to Cape Town, Johannesburg, Zimbabwe,
Okay,
and
we'll
Victoria
have to
Falls. So
come.
I've been to those places. So we will have to talk and do a whole episode. I actually went with my family. I have a very large family, which you'll learn about me. My extended family is like super close and we vacation together. We're kind of one of those weird people that like 20 tickets to South Africa. Little Brady Bunch people. I went to South Africa with my family 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something along those lines. We usually take a big trip each year. Had a lovely time. You're going to love it.
Right.
You are going to love it. So, anyway, what am I spending my fun money on? Maybe once this episode drops, I'll have already spent the money, but I am planning on getting some residency graduation gifts and donating to the pool. When I graduated from residency, I think they gave out a few awards, gave us a plaque, and we had a little dinner with maybe some free wine. And they said, go forth. But where I work, that is not the case. They're like, attendings chip in and like give these residents money. And so we actually have like an attending pool, if you will. And each of us donates like $100 or $200 into the pool, like not a small amount of money. And so during their residency graduation, we present them with envelopes of cash. And so they are thrilled about that each year. They're like, we've already spent the money. So yes, that is something fun that I'm doing with money, is kind of sharing the wealth with my residents.
That's beautiful. Good for you.
I love it. I love it. Well, hopefully you found this episode helpful. Dr. Naomi and I will be back again next week.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for Dr. Lisha Taylor. Just so you know, she's not a financial advisor, tax professional, lawyer, or financial planner. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, you know. So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.